Morning YouTube. It's just after 6 o'clock, about 6:30 actually, on Saturday. And I'm at the top of this hill near where I live again. I'll just show you. There's the TV mast. There's the horizon, quick scan of that. The sun comes up over there. Didn't quite get up here early enough to get the sunrise. I'm going to try and do that tomorrow morning. Anyway, I'm not thinking about that specifically. I'm thinking about virtual reality. Partly prompted by a video I watched by Machine Ghosts, but also I'm thinking about it for in terms of a project I'm just starting to develop, really. Virtual reality. I guess when I think about virtual reality, or when people talk about it, it's often talked about in the context of escapism. You know, that virtual reality is like cinema or like a novel. It's something you lose yourself in. You put your body down for a bit, you put your present day obsessions and concerns down for a while and enter this other realm where, you know, life is less threatening, or where you can play with life being threatening without there being the consequences that it would be in the real world. You know, you can shoot people and be shot at, but you know you're not going to die. You can play with kind of romantic involvements that you wouldn't be and have in the real world. You can have the kind of body and the kind of lifestyle that you wouldn't be able to have in the real world. It's associated with those kind of escapisms. You know, perhaps for good reason in some cases. I'm not necessarily saying that's a negative thing. The kinds of escapisms you have when you enter a novel or a good film are often, you know, ways of working things out, I think. You know, going through, or a play, you know, Shakespeare's plays is a classic example. You know, you work through those, and there's aspects of the human condition that you kind of live by proxy whilst you're experiencing that, and that can be, you know, an enlivening, enlightening, perhaps even wisdom-creating experience. So I don't think there's anything wrong with those kind of escapisms and journeys out of yourself into another world. But as I say, it's often, I think, thought of as the negative kind of escapism, where you just engage and indulge really in kind of a delusion, so you don't have to face reality, this reality, actual reality, as opposed to virtual reality. But I know I'm thinking about slightly different ways into that. Partly, as I said, informed by this project I'm thinking about. It seems to me that virtual reality has a potential to be like a kind of philosophical tool, and by that I mean a way of experiencing ideas and concepts in a fully embodied fashion, or at least partially embodied fashion, which would otherwise be kind of dry and academic and difficult to wrap your head around, difficult to understand, difficult to internalise. You know, because only understanding, and to my mind at least, certain kinds of knowledge only really function once you've internalised them and you're kind of living them, you can feel them operating in you. That's when really understanding kicks in, I think. And virtual reality to me offers the opportunity to do that. I was at a conference a few years ago when some really early VR stuff was being piloted. So I used to go to a lot of conferences on consciousness and technology. That used to be my field for a while. And there's some really early stuff there. And there was quite a nice one. It was a woman who developed, whereas it was a classic old school VR helmet. You know, as you turned your head, what you got on the screen wasn't VR exactly. It was she was working with what used to be called virtual reality modelling language. So you would get you would be taken to different VRML websites. So you would get different kind of it's too difficult to explain. Different kind of geometrical arrangements of the space around you. But your bodily movements and your vision were mapped onto these different VRML creations, which is really interesting. But the thing I'm thinking about in terms of usage right now isn't so much to do with VR as AR, augmented reality. At least that's the way I'm using my thinking for this project I'm piloting. Augmented reality is the stuff that's getting big now because of Google Glass. But basically just, you know, layers on the present landscape. So if I was wearing augmented reality glasses right now, I might be having a slightly different experience than the one you're having. You know, as I look at that tower, it might be overlaid by a series of images, perhaps information about it, perhaps information about what signals it was carrying, what carriers were operating through it. It might be operating like that. As I scan out that way towards the sunrise, that's over Falmouth direction, I might be the image might be overlaid, if nothing else, with a compass so you can see which direction I'm pointing, but perhaps some information about the sunrise, the weather, all kinds of different things. But I could do it with about I could overlay it with different kinds of information. So I could overlay this environment, for example, with historical information. Now, there's a lot of archaeological sites of interest around here, not just really old ones, Neolithic ones. There's a lot of Neolithic stuff here, but also more recent kind of industrial heritage stuff, like a couple of 100 years. And a lot of it's under my feet, and I would really like it if I had Google Glass, which you could tap into that. You know, I look down, and there's the mine workings underneath my feet, you know, with information about it, and maybe the movie plays out of people dragging the coal, not the coal, what is it, tin and copper, over to the stamps over there where it's processed. You know, I'd be able to see that overlaid onto the current reality. So I wouldn't just be looking into space, I'd be looking into time, you know, the sense of time being present with me. And maybe also even be able to do things to do with space. Like, I'm on top of a hill here, and this isn't the only hill in the world, you probably know that. Yeah. But it'd be quite nice if I'm on the top of this hill, and it somehow connects me to other kind of geographical and geological formations in other parts of the world. And this is one of the things I'm thinking of specifically right now, because I'm interested in doing this project in relation to a conference on climate change. And one of the things I think in terms of climate change is the development of a kind of global consciousness, or a global awareness, an awareness that we don't live separate lives in climate terms and in other terms as well. Even though it feels like I'm alone on top of this hill, of course I'm in the same environment, the same climate, the same global system as you are watching this, and finding a kind of AR, an augmented reality way of linking these spaces, linking this hill to the top of the hill in another part of the world. So as I stand here with my Google Glass, my augmented reality vision going on, I'm simultaneously here, but I'm simultaneously somewhere else. So that feeling of being here, right now, that I have, is extended. You know, my very consciousness is changed slightly by the tool of augmented reality. So I start to develop an awareness of the global context in which I'm operating, something like that. That's what I mean when I say that VR or AR in this case, as well as being an escape mechanism, could potentially be a tool for some kind of enlightenment, you know, a different kind of consciousness. Because all our tools change our way of being, don't they? Our tools change our consciousness, change our understanding of ourselves and the way that we operate. The software of our consciousness, the software of our minds changes. I suppose in human terms, the most significant pieces of software we're running is something like language, spoken language and writing, and they're different, aren't they? But I mean, those pieces of software running on what's basically the same biological hardware of all the other animals around here. But those bits of software, language and writing, change the nature of my consciousness and yours. You know, we're in this engagement right now because we both have this piece of language software running, which is changing my being and is incorporating some of your being within it almost as part of this exchange that we're having. And the same with writing. You know, writing extends my consciousness every time. I can read things that are written by dead folk and have a little bit of their thoughts occupying my mind, which is quite radical, isn't it? And this, you know, I'm not trying to be human chauvinistic here. You know, other animals have got different bits of software going on. You know, the rabbits, there's a lot of rabbits up here. The rabbits and these the hedgerows over here, they have very different things. They've got split brains, you know, rabbits. The two sides of their brain aren't connected up in the way ours are. So they have a completely different way of being in the world. They're kind of in two places at once. And the fact they don't have binocular vision means that they don't amalgamate the images from each eye into this sense of depth that we have. They do something really different. There's a lot of crows around here as well. There's none in the air right now that I'd point to, but there's a lot of crows here. And crows and other birds have something different going on as well, don't they? You know, we crawl around in basically two-dimensional landscape. You know, here's this plane and I'm walking around. Right? But crows have got access to the third dimension, and that's got to change your consciousness. It's got to change your way of being in the world. It's a different piece of software running, different tool. Our tools changes, don't they? I think someone famous said that. We invent our tools and our tools invent us. And I think the same thing is true with something like AR. It has the potential to fairly radically, I think, alter our perception of who we are, at least visually. I mean, AR only works visually, and something I guess proprioceptively, it's not related to the body. It doesn't engage with your sense of touch very much, and sense of taste and those things, but smell, it could. But it does, I think, offer some kind of potential for that kind of rewiring process, and the embodying of an idea. It's all very well saying, yeah, well, we live in a global world now, don't we? It's all very well saying that, but until you have it inside yourself as internalised knowledge, understanding, then it's just the wind's picking up, so I'm going to leave you with the small tower in front and the big tower behind. The small tower to the right, and there's the big tower.